welcome back to Flip Flops, brought to you by Treefish EDU. This is a YouTube live series. Expect some laughs, some flops, some tips, tricks, and best practices all around flip learning. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Eric Geis. I'm an Edtech coach, a podcaster of Edtech the Podcast with Nick, and I recently completed my doctorate in digital transformation in education.
And my name is Nick Johnson. I'm a high school chemistry teacher and instructional technology coach. Also, one of the other co-hosts of Edtech the Podcast with Geis and an EdTech enthusiast.
Hey everyone, my name is Kyle Nemus. I was a science teacher for a long time, and now I'm an EdTech coach, an avid flipper, and co-founder of Classroom Q, and excited to be here.
All right, so each week there are two of us on camera. I'm going to bail out of here and let you two take it over. Have fun, guys.
Thanks. All right, so we always start off with a quick introduction to flip learning, just in case this is anybody's, maybe the first time you're hearing about this term. If you've been following along with the entire series, then it's about the sixth time you've heard it, so sorry about that, but it's good to lay this kind of framework for everybody, just in case. So flip learning, it's an educational framework or model, whatever you want to call it, and it literally does that. It flips this sort of traditional lecture style teaching format around. If you have heard about it, you probably heard about it in the sort of the perspective of that it's where you're doing the homework in school and the schoolwork at home, and that's where the kind of that term flipped learning, what it leads us to. And that is sort of one way to do flip learning, but it's also, we think the definition is much more expansive than that. And it can actually mean lots of different things. So to us at Treefish EDU, one of the best ways to run your flipped classroom, it really just means having kids gather their content digitally. And typically this is done with videos, but it could be any digital source without having to be in class. And that's the best part about it, is now they have control over when and where they access the content, how long they can spend with it. And it never goes away. So they don't get like this one shot in class to listen to you and then everything is over after that. The other benefit is that class time is then free for what I like to call the fun stuff, the projects, labs, hands-on activities, because now you don't have to spend all that time lecturing and explaining the content itself. We think it works really great, although as you'll soon find out, lots of things can go wrong. Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about flip-flops?
Yeah, it's the same thing. If you are new to us, we run this series once a week called Flip Flops. And it's just what it sounds like. The three of us have done a whole lot of flipping, and we have experimented and learned a whole lot along the way. So our goal every week is that you guys can learn from our mistakes and hopefully pick up wherever you are in your journey and move a little quicker and make a little bit less mistakes and learn from us. So each week we talk about a couple things, a couple main pointers that you can walk away with. And like I said, each person is on the hot seat a different week, and today is Nick's time on the hot seat when he's going to talk a little bit about the assumptions that he made from his students. So Nick, so tell us a little bit about this. So the whole thing is starting off with that you thought that your students knew more ed tech than you, which makes sense, right? Because kids these days know technology, right? And they're all so perfectly wonderful. So why wouldn't they know exactly how to flip the way you'd want them to? But I feel like it didn't work out the way you planned.
No, man, you nailed it. And it's we kind of always hear, at least in the teaching world, we hear that students or young people, the common term, and one of the terms for it is digital natives, that the students these days or kids just grow up with technology and they know how to use these things way better than you do, teachers. So don't worry so much about the details. They'll figure it out. And that's only partially true. But if you go by that sort of as gospel, and that's how you plan out your flipped classroom unit, because there's lots of technology involved in it, it doesn't go so good for you, because your students are digital native learners, but not always with ed tech. We always talk about how, kids are digital natives, but only when it comes to logging into YouTube from a cell phone or running their social media account on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the new flavor of the month happens to be. Anything outside of that, if you expect them to just go use, a Google site and produce this quality polished product, it may not go so well, because how good it? They've never done it before. So my particular experience was taking that statement to mean that I didn't have to train my kids how to do anything. And in particular, I mentioned I'm a chemistry teacher, and I did a unit one year on thermodynamics for my college prep chemistry kids. It was the first year I'd done it. It's really complex stuff. But I was like, you know what? I'm doing this flipped classroom thing. It works really well. I'm just going to go for it. I bet these kids can handle anything I throw at them. And I put together this whole unit start to finish, and I had all sorts of cool stuff there, creative activities. They're watching videos at their own pace. So one kid's over here on lesson 6. Other people are back here on lesson 3, and I'm sort of moving in around them, and it looked awesome from the outside in. But along the way, I've built in all sorts of creative activities and things for these students to do. They were making videos, or ideally, they were supposed to be making videos, creating storyboards, stop motion slides, you name it. It was built into this unit as a project or some way that the kids can demonstrate their mastery. But I didn't tell them at all how I wanted them to use these tools. For example, one of the things I wanted them to do was, hey guys, make a screencast that shows me how heat transfers from one object to another when they're in contact. And it sounds really great to me, and I know how to make a screencast using Screencastify, but I didn't train them at all or tell them which tool to use. Actually, I did. I linked. This is all I did, Kyle. Imagine this. I put 3 links, one to Screencastify's Chrome extension download page, one to Screencast-O-Matics, and I forget what the third option was. And that's all I did. And guess what? It didn't go very well. Same thing. I mentioned the Google site earlier. It's just, I just told them to do it, but with no support, and things were either disastrous, or for the Google site, they did produce them, but they were not high quality because the kids had no support. So I think that's kind of the key here.
I think you hit the nail on the head with your last statement of high quality, because I would venture to say that most kids probably could figure out generally how to do it. They'd struggle through it, right? And they'd make something, because it is really hard, because they are generally good with technology. But I've worked with so many teachers, and I've said, like, it's an easy tool, throw it at them, and they'll probably figure it out. And I do think it works well for certain tools, but I think flipped learning is different, don't you? Because flipped learning isn't just simply a tool, it's an entire way of learning, and it's a different structure, and it's so much bigger than just figuring out a tool. So do you have any tips or anything that you've learned along the way that can maybe help the people out there, same as it, who are going to give it a shot, and they're like, oh man, now I need to supply all these tutorials. Like, now it seems even bigger at this point. So how do you handle this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad you mentioned that there are some things that don't take a whole lot of explanation. One of the popular tools out there is called Edpuzzle, where as students watch videos, it kind of pauses the video and it asks them questions at various points. That's really great for flipped learning, and that doesn't take a whole lot of prep work or tutorials on the teacher's part, because the students don't have to do anything. So this is specifically for things that you're asking your kids to do in class, the projects, the labs, whatever it is, whatever they're producing. If it involves some kind of technology, you've got to be ready to support them in how to do that. So my first tip is just knowing that they are not the tech natives that you expect them to be when it comes to a lot of these educational technology tools. So if I'm going to ask my students to make a Screencastify, I decided I'm not going to give them options. I'm going to tell them that what the easiest one is to use, at least at the start of the year. So guys, we're using Screencastify. And then as a class, take some time for that large group style instruction, even though we generally stay away from that in the flipped classroom. But take 5 minutes, download it together, give them a quick tutorial on how to do it, share some prior created screencast videos to sort of just get their creative juices flowing, and then let them go. If you do it in class live like that, it doesn't take a whole lot of prep work on your side besides sort of figuring out what you want to say and making sure you know how to use the tool. That's probably the easiest way. If you want to be a little bit more advanced and really build these tutorials into the flipped classroom itself, you could make little tutorial videos that are on the side of your content videos to instruct students on how to use whatever it is you're asking them to use in class. So the biggest message here is to just spend time building in these moments where the kids can practice using this stuff. And I'm pretty sure that wraps it up for the main tips on making sure that kids have the support for these tools. Guys, how do we do with this whole thing?
Oh, let me tell you, if I had a GIF for every single time I wanted to go like that when you were talking, you know what? That's how I'm going to give my points out today. I think I did that 12 times for you, Nick. I'm going to give Kyle one positive thumbs up because I actually agreed with him throughout the entire episode. This is all on you, Nick. And for that reason, I think you should have to recap the episode. This isn't bullying. This is real life right now. The points, the gifts, they don't mean anything. But Nick, why don't you recap the episode and then go right into introducing next week's episode?
You got it. So, quick summary of my main points here for this episode of Flip Flops is that students are not the tech natives you expect them to be unless you're talking about YouTube or social media like Instagram and TikTok. When you're planning out your next flipped lesson or flipped unit, make sure to build in class time for brief how-to lessons and tutorials on any of the EdTech tools that you expect them to use, as long as you want what they produce to be up to snuff. And of course, stay tuned for next time, our next episode of Flipped Flops, released every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Next week, it's Kyle's Flop, where he's going to tell us how he started flipping, but didn't change the structure of his class. Crazy. And then, of course, in the meantime, you can subscribe at treefishedu.com/virtualpd. We won't spam you. We'll just remind you about upcoming opportunities with Treefish EDU.